Welcome to the Empowering Industry Podcast, a production from Empowering Pumps and Equipment as the voice of the pump and related equipment industry. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Empowering Industry Podcast. I'm your host, Charli Matthews, and like every week, I am super excited to bring you a new guest. But before we do that, I want to just let you know that you can subscribe to our channel. That's awesome. You can do that in any platform that you get your podcasts, but also we're on YouTube. So take a look at that. We have many different videos, different trainings and things there from empowering pumps and equipment, as well as empowering women in industry. We have a lot of fun there too. So let's get started. Joel, will you introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure, absolutely. And Charli, thank you so much for having me on this week. It was a pleasure to meet you back at the event in College Station. And so my name is Joel Poe. I'm the vice president at Applied Impact Robotics. I guess my main focus is, all commercial activities, everything from driving awareness about our product and our startup tech in the oil and gas industry, all the way to raising venture capital funds and some other things in that regard. So I've been with the company about 2 years now. We were founded back late 2019, I believe. I was actually employee number one. So, we've seen a lot of growth since then. It's a pretty unique founding story. Actually, our co-founders were given the idea by Petronas, which is Malaysia's national oil company. So that's one of the things we differentiate ourselves on a lot. And what startup companies have a big challenge overcoming is, are they actually creating technology that the industry will buy? And so for us, that was pretty easy because one of the companies came to us with the idea and actually gave us some startup funds to test out our ideas and concepts. So a little bit more of my background. What we do have in common is I'm actually from Alabama. And so I grew up
Roll
in,
Tide. I have to do
Roll
it. Roll
Tide.
Tide.
That's right. I grew up in Mobile, Alabama area, Baldwin County, actually. I went to the University of Alabama and got a degree in chemical engineering. So I'm very familiar with the Tuscaloosa area. Love it. Unfortunately, haven't had a chance to get back there enough as I would like, but I moved out to Texas.
It connects you with, people. I mean, I think that's what, I don't know that you knew us from Alabama when we met, but that was a fun common thing at the conference. So it's fun to just have that association and kind of get it. And so I do think it's kind of interesting to go from chemical engineering into this robotics role. So I'm curious how that kind of happened.
Yeah, it was it was certainly it's been an interesting career path for me so far. Very fortunate, actually. When I was, I always tell people when I was going into college, I chose chemical engineering because my brother was actually studying it, and I really didn't know much more about it other than that. I knew it paid pretty well, so all those things checked the box. And I got the engineering degree, moved to Texas, knew I wanted to get in the oil and gas industry. My first job out of college, we actually acquired a small startup company, and there was some new technology involved. And I was fortunate enough, to be on that kind of first team rolling out that business unit. And we're actually really, really successful with that technology. And so that kind of springboarded me into my role that I started before Applied Impact Robotics, but it was a true startup. We were out raising venture capital money, friends and family dollars, kind of bootstrapping from the garage type thing. And it was really innovative tech, really changed the way the oil and gas industry did business. And we ended up selling out to a publicly traded company back in May of 2020, right when oil went negative and the pandemic hit. And it's unfortunate timing, but it was great for the company and the people that were involved. So then actually I had a customer, a mutual customer at Kinder Morgan. He introduced me to Fred Briggs and Jade Garrett, who are the co-founders of Applied Impact Robotics. And they were kind of, they come from the drone and robotics background. They're actually based right outside of Washington, D.C., but they didn't really have a background in oil and gas. So they were talking with Earl, who's our mutual connection, and he knew I was kind of trying to get back into a startup role. So he made the connection, and things just went from there. And it seemed to be a really good fit. And I had the background in oil and gas and the business development, side of things. And they brought the tech. And so, 10 years ago, if you'd asked me if I'd be in robotics today, I would have said there's no chance. But, I went up and visited with Fred and the team, and saw what they were doing and the vision they had for this technology. And it, I fell in love with how they were, how they visioned changing the oil and gas industry. And for me, that's the biggest thing, not so much the robotics, but it's more about how can we bring technology to the oil and gas industry to allow it to evolve and stay competitive with these newer sustainable energies. And so, we know it's never going to be completely phased out, but there's so much room for improvement. For so many years, oil and gas was, the only game in town. And now it's seeing that, there are alternative energy sources that are being pushed, and some are more successful than others. But it just goes to show you, it's so important for the industry to have innovation and things like robotic platforms, to continue to provide, advantages and keep it fossil fuels as a competitive energy source.
Yeah, there's so much there. I think, one, you have that kind of entrepreneurial spirit, that innovation in you, kind of just listening to your story, that business sense, if you will, is kind of there, whether you kind of put that together with engineering background or not. It's definitely helpful in the space that you're in. And so I just love that. I love that how you got into this, but I am curious, have you seen, going in and talking robotics with people, has it helped companies be more, efficient, effective? Like what is it doing to help these companies?
Yeah, it certainly has. And I think, we're at kind of a point in this whole technology revolution, if you will, where, the past decade, it's been more trial and error, and, what are these technologies actually going to be capable of doing? And there was a lot of failures involved in that, because everybody just had this, preconceived notion that robotics were just going to come in and replace people. And, we were just going to be this, robotic driven, labor force. And that's really not the case. It took a decade to kind of figure out that there are limitations on these machines, and, the machine learning and the AI platforms, they've got a long way to go, and they're certainly helpful, but they're never going to replace humans. And I think that's the biggest thing. And so, when I go and I talk with customers about the value that our technology can provide, it's never about replacing their current workforce or their labor. It's more about, being able to provide them with the resources to enhance their everyday, their everyday jobs and their quality of their jobs. And so for us specifically, we're designing a robot that goes inside of these massive crude oil storage tanks and does, API 653 inspections. And so that's a federally regulated inspection that these tank owners and operators are required to do every 10 years. And basically, it just checks for the integrity of the tank to make sure there's no, there's no failures or degradation from corrosion. There's no leaks, things of that nature. And so, our robot, it's injected into the oil tank while there's, it's still in service. You don't have to take these tanks out of service. But more so, how they're currently doing these inspections before this technology is they would drain the oil. And then when the oil is all drained out of the tank, you're left with what they refer to as the bottoms. And that's, the heavy sediment, kind of the tar sludge type material that you would think of when you talk about crude oil. And, from there, they literally put humans inside of the tank. with shovels and equipment to scoop that stuff out. And, these tanks can be as large as 300 feet in diameter by, 8-10 stories tall. So it's massive amounts of volumes of this sludge and sediment. It can take months and months to clean them out before there's ever an inspection ever done. So with each minute that you're having a human inside these tanks in a confined space entry, you're exposing yourself to liabilities and potential hazards for your workforce. So for us, that's what we're promoting is safety and quality of the job description. So I think there's been, from the top level of these corporations, there's been a big focus on removing humans from these type of jobs. I mean, let's face it, it's 2023. I mean, there's no need for humans to have to go to work every day in that kind of environment. And so what we're doing is we're trying to remove that, but there's also a big environmental focus on our technology. So obviously everybody's probably been hearing about the VOC emissions and green energy for the last several years, and it's a real thing. I mean, there are VOC emissions that are emitted from these tanks when they're taken out of service. They have to basically take the manway ports on the side of these tanks and open them up to the atmosphere and vent all those toxic fluids or toxic vapors out. And those are recordable emissions. And so one of the things that you do remove in addition to the confined space entry is the VOC emissions, because you're not having to open this tank up to the atmosphere. You basically just, you're able to open it for a few minutes, put the robot in, and then close it back up. And so while there's still some emissions that are recordable there, it's not months and months and months of exposure there. So that's certainly, along with safety, one of the big things these companies are focused on is environmental performance. And then also, usually these conversations, they begin with safety and environmental, but they always end with business economics and, where are my savings at? How much are you going to charge me? What, how does this work? Because while safety and environmental are real things, there are obviously ways that these companies cope with it right now. I mean, they believe that there are processes and procedures in place where they can safely work inside of these tanks if they need to. They would rather not, but if they have to, they will. And so there has to be a business case for them to obviously make the change. But again, by providing this technology, they're able to keep these tanks in service. And so they never have to take them out of service. They don't have to pay for excess storage. There's no lost opportunity from downtime. And so those add up very quickly. And there's technologies out there that have already proven these to be true, not necessarily in the crude oil market, but there are similar technologies that do, say, water tank inspections or diesel fuel tank inspections, things like that. So we know it's real. We've recently signed memorandums of understanding with BP and also a collaborative project contract with Chevron as of last week. So we're really happy to announce that. But so I guess where I was going with that is, the companies like that, they recognize that these savings are real. These benefits of this type of technology are real. And so we're really happy to and excited to see where that takes us.
Yeah, well, I can absolutely see the benefits. I mean, just like you said, the safety, the human aspect, and being able to spend your time doing something else for one, in a safer environment. Yeah, why would we do that? I remember, when we talk robots, if you will, like moving equipment, right? Like that used to be somebody's job that had to move this motor or whatever, this heavy piece of equipment. Why not have a robot do that? And then they can spend their time doing something else, and it's not wear and tear on your body. So you're able to work longer and in more comfort. So I'm on board with that. It sounds awesome. It's really great to see that innovation and that we are able to provide that technology in the oil and gas space. I know that we're all looking for ways to improve the sustainability of these places and these companies are looking, okay, what can I do? And this is a solution or one of the solutions that are out there. So I love that. And I think you do have to kind of break down those barriers of past beliefs of this is the way we've done it. And look, and I'm just glad that, I mean, it looks like people are taking that step, right, to get to that new way of doing things that helps us and makes us more sustainable.
Yeah, and to add on to that, there's also an aspect of how much new energy infrastructure is actually going to be built over the next 20 years. So we just went through a period of substantial growth this last 6-8 years, where you saw all kinds of new terminals being built, new ports, new gas processing facilities, things of that nature, all kinds of well production in our major basins. But we've kind of hit a period of where it's not so much growth, but it's strategic assets, right? And you see companies like Shell selling off major assets because they're not part of the strategic vision they have. And so one of the big things that they're concentrating on is, well, how can they keep those strategic assets in service, and how can they manage them better and keep their, the health of those assets ongoing. And so when you're able to use things like, AI and robotic platforms to collect this data more often, where, previously you would have, it's only a data point every 10 years, right? But with technologies like robotics, you could get data sets as often and as much as frequent as you would like. And so it gives them more visibility into the health of their assets. It gives them, better understanding of, okay, well, what crude oils are more corrosive than others, things like that. How can they manage this tank better so, the coating on the floor lasts longer? And so we're able to capture all that data. And one of the things that we're looking at doing now is, well, you have this big data set and everybody loves big data, but how do you actually process it and make it useful so that these companies and your customers can do something valuable with that data and make better decisions with it? And so we're excited about not only the robotics side of things, but where our platform might go in terms of AI and some of those advanced analytics down the line, where we can actually implement some of that data and help guide decision making with their assets. So
yeah, I remember that being a big topic at the conference. First, how do we get the data, but then what do we do with it, and how do we keep it safe as well? All of those things where the industry is talking about it, which is wonderful. And I think that when you have been in the industry and then you get into and kind of working with other businesses and share, then that's where the innovations happen. But you do have to have the background and understanding, so that for you specifically, having that background in oil and gas, being an engineer, but also business savvy and out there talking with people, all of those are just leading up to being able to do your job and create better. So I think it's wonderful, again, like to have met you and to know that y'all are out there doing this. But is there anything else that, you had in mind that you wanted to leave our audience with?
Nothing in particular. I think, one of the biggest things for me is just trying to get really our message out, and not only ours, but every other startup technology that's out there trying to improve the health and well-being of the labor force in whatever industry you might be serving. But also, help those industries stay competitive. The oil and gas industry, especially here in Texas, where I'm currently based, I think it provided $24 billion in tax revenue to the state and 650,000 jobs to the state of Texas last year. And so it's a huge economical, machine, and all kinds of industries are in the relative locations. But I think just, for innovators to be able to try to innovate and produce new technology to keep those industries competitive and looking at long-term goals is so important, because, successful industries over time, it breeds complacency. And then, you end up where the oil and gas industry was the last 20 years, where they really haven't done anything different. And they're catching all this heat for not improving environmental things and not, complying with safety and things like that. And so it's just so important for entrepreneurs and innovators to continue driving the growth in technology. And it's really gonna, put the United States and even the companies on a global platform in a better space.
Yeah. And I think you made me think about this while you're talking, just being able to kind of push that envelope, right? Not get complacent. Like, we're always sort of teaching people social media and digital technology. And I just hope, that it doesn't take a decade, right? That we have these tools that if we just open our minds and work together and collaborate, we'll be able to move that faster for some of these companies, which is awesome. Yeah. So if y'all haven't noticed, I'm a big fan, not just because, you're from Alabama, but I did tell you, I kind of scoped out your LinkedIn. River Keepers, which is this organization here where we kind of clean up around the water here, which it kind of touched me. I told you, like, I like anything that is related to Alabama, but we are doing a lot of work in the water side in Alabama too. So that was kind of neat. But I wouldn't let you go. That's just one fun fact that I know about you without asking you kind of these little rapid fire questions. So
Okay.
if you're ready, I do want to ask you what your favorite book is.
My favorite book, I actually just read one this last couple of weeks. It's called Zero to IPO. And it has to be one of my favorites that I've read so far. It's a fantastic, book, and really lays out all of the framework. If you're out there starting a company, it covers everything from, the inception of the idea to picking your co-founders, to helping you establish a pitch deck and raise money, and your first employee to your last employee, and ultimately if you decide to IPO. So if you're an entrepreneur or a startup founder out there and you haven't read it, read Zero to IPO. It'll really give you some good insight.
Awesome. So as a startup company, I will definitely do that.
Yeah.
What about music? Do you have a favorite song or band that you like?
Yeah, actually, Creedence Clearwater, Green River is probably one of my favorite songs of all time. And that takes me way back. I remember my older brother listening to that, taking me to school when I was younger. And so it's a great band, and certainly one of my top favorites.
Love it. Okay. So best advice that you've ever received?
Ooh, that's a good one. Probably, just show up. There's so many things that, people don't do just because they don't show up, right? And they're scared about, whether they have some anxiety about public speaking, or, they might get it wrong, or they don't have all the answers. But if you just show up and you put yourself in a position, even if you do fail, you can learn from it and be better prepared the next time. But if you never show up, you'll never, gain those experiences or have an opportunity to knock it out of the park. So
I feel like you answered kind of both questions in that, but I am going to pose it anyway. For people, I guess, young people coming in to the industry, what advice would you give them?
Into the oil and gas industry specifically?
I mean, you can go with that if you want to branch it out. I mean, I was going to ask, do you see your robots going outside of the oil and gas industry? Because there's a lot of other tanks or whatever. But yeah, just coming into industry itself.
Yeah, I would say coming into industry itself, be open-minded. I've had a very fortunate career so far, and got to do a lot of cool stuff and travel the world. But I never thought, like I was saying earlier, I'd be in the robotics industry, having a chemical engineering background in the oil and gas. But if you just stay open-minded and really follow, your passion. And so my passion for keeping the oil and gas industry competitive and bringing new technologies to industry led me down this road in robotics. And I've learned a lot and met a lot of really interesting and fascinating people way smarter than I'll ever, you could even dream to be, but in this robotic space. And so if you're coming into industry, and you're brand new out of college, there's not a better time in your career to look at small companies and startups and new technologies. It's so much easier when you're younger than as you grow and you look for more sustainability. But in terms of our company looking outside of the oil and gas industry, I would say there's certainly a very long outlook where we've talked about what potential applications would be. Being as we haven't yet completed a commercial inspection in the oil and gas industry, it's really hard to focus on that. But you mentioned being a water lover and all things water, and so there's actually opportunities for this technology to do the same type of inspections for municipalities and other manufacturing plants that store water on site. And so we've got some ideas there. There's also some pipeline work, which really falls in oil and gas again, but it's outside of the tank application. And so this technology could potentially be used to do some internal piping inspection as well. So
exciting
yeah, we've
stuff.
got all kinds of ideas. Yeah.
Which I don't think I could be around you without like that, excitement for business, next step, like what are we going to do? And you're pretty active and busy out there making this happen, which I love. If anybody wants to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, if anybody's listening and wants to connect with me, probably LinkedIn, would be the best and easiest way to contact me. I'd be happy to share my, direct contact information with you as well if anybody reaches out.
Awesome. So we will definitely put that in the show notes. This will be going out through LinkedIn and all of our channels on empowering pumps and equipment. So I guess, I could talk to you all day, but I'll let it end there. And I'll say,
Sure.
everybody, make sure that you have subscribed to our channel, that you share this. I think this episode is actually awesome to share with your community, get them inspired about the next step for, if they're looking at starting their own business, or if they're in a business that they want to see it grow, they want to see it, expand and innovate. I think this is a great episode to share. So do that. I'd love to hear from you. And I guess until next time, be empowering.